Little girl crashes mom's wedding to reveal a secret about her stepdad. The church fell silent as 8-year-old Emma burst through the doors, her flower girl dress torn and muddy, tears streaming down her face as she screamed the words that would shatter her mother's perfect wedding day forever. "He's not who you think he is, Mommy. I have proof." But what this brave little girl was about to reveal about her soon-to-be stepfather would expose a secret so dark, it would change everything. You see, David Thompson wasn't just deceiving one family. He was living a triple life that involved identity theft, multiple marriages, and a criminal network that had been operating for over a decade. And Emma, this 8-year-old detective, had stumbled upon evidence that would bring down an entire operation. Just 30 minutes earlier, everything seemed perfect. Sarah Martinez had spent 2 years planning this day, believing she had finally found a man who would complete their little family. After her divorce 3 years ago, she thought she'd never find love again. The divorce had been brutal. Emma's biological father had walked out when she was just 4, leaving behind nothing but debt and broken promises. Sarah had worked double shifts as a nurse just to keep their small house, often coming home exhausted to find Emma doing homework alone at the kitchen table. The loneliness had been overwhelming. Sarah would lie awake at night wondering if she would ever find someone who could love both her and Emma unconditionally. She had tried dating apps, blind dates set up by well-meaning friends, but nothing felt right. Most men seemed uncomfortable around Emma or treated her like an obstacle to overcome rather than a blessing to embrace. Then came David Thompson, and everything seemed to change overnight. He appeared in their lives like an answer to prayer, charming, successful, and most importantly, someone who seemed to genuinely care about Emma. He would bring her small gifts, remember her school events, and even volunteer to help with her science fair project. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like they could be a real family again. Before I move deeper into this story, I want you to tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments. And make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here and enjoy interesting stories like this. Emma stood at the back of the church, clutching her basket of rose petals, watching as guests filled the pews. Her grandmother adjusted her dress one final time and whispered, "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Are you ready to walk down that aisle?" But Emma's stomach churned with a secret that had been eating at her for weeks. The past few days had been torture for Emma. She had barely slept, picking at her food, jumping every time David spoke to her. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had even called Sarah to express concern about Emma's son's behavioral changes. "She seems distracted and anxious," Mrs. Rodriguez had said. "Is everything okay at home?" Sarah had dismissed it as pre-wedding jitters, never imagining that her 8-year-old daughter was carrying the weight of a secret that could destroy their entire world. Emma had practiced this moment in her mirror dozens of times. She had rehearsed the words, imagined her mother's face, prepared for every possible reaction. But now, standing in this beautiful church surrounded by family and friends who were all here to celebrate what they thought was a joyous occasion, Emma felt the full weight of what she was about to do. It all started 3 weeks ago when Emma forgot her lunch money and ran back home from school. She expected the house to be empty since her mom was at work, and David had said he was traveling for business in Chicago. But as she quietly opened the front door with the spare key hidden under the flower pot, she heard voices coming from the living room. David's voice, but also a woman's voice she didn't recognize, and something that sounded like a child's laughter. Emma's first instinct was to call out, thinking maybe David had returned early and brought visitors. But something in the tone of their conversation made her pause. There was an intimacy in their voices, a familiarity that made her stomach clench with inexplicable dread. Emma crept closer, her small feet silent on the carpet her mom had saved up months to buy. Through the crack in the door, she saw David sitting on their couch, the same couch where he and her mom watched movies together every Friday night. But he wasn't alone. With him was a blonde woman Emma had never seen before, someone who looked to be about her mom's age but with perfect makeup and expensive clothes that Sarah could never afford. But what made her blood run cold wasn't just seeing the stranger in their home. It was seeing the way David was holding her, the way he kissed her forehead with the same tenderness he showed her mom, and most shocking of all, the toddler playing at their feet who had David's distinctive green eyes and the same dimple in his left cheek that Emma had always found endearing when David smiled. "What are you going to tell her about us?" the woman asked, bouncing the little boy on her knee. "Marcus keeps asking why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. Yesterday, he asked if the lady in the pictures is going to be his new mommy." David ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture Emma had seen him do when he was stressed about work deadlines or wedding planning. "Jennifer, you know it's complicated. Once I marry Sarah, I'll have access to her savings, her house, everything. The life insurance policy alone is worth $300,000. Then we can disappear together, just like we planned with the others." Emma felt like she was going to throw up. The others? What others? Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. "I just hate lying to Marcus. And what about Chicago? Linda is getting suspicious about why you haven't moved in yet. She's been asking questions." "Linda can wait," David snapped, his voice taking on a harsh edge Emma had never heard before. "This is bigger than Chicago. Sarah's got more assets than Linda ever did. And she's so trusting, so desperate for a father figure for that kid. She practically handed me her financial information on our third date." Emma's world crumbled in that moment. Not only was David planning to steal from her mom, but there was someone named Linda in Chicago, and who knows how many other women he was deceiving. The man who had been reading her bedtime stories, helping with homework, and promising to be the father she never had, was nothing more than a professional con artist. But what about the little girl? Jennifer asked, glancing toward the family photos on the mantel where Emma's school pictures sat next to images of Sarah and David looking happy together. "Sarah's daughter seems to really like you. She made you that Father's Day card last month." David's laugh was cold and calculating. "Kids are resilient. She'll get over it. Besides, this was never about playing house. This is about securing our future, Jennifer, Marcus's future. Once I clean out Sarah's accounts and sell this place, we'll have enough to disappear to Costa Rica, just like we planned. New identities, new life. And if she reports it to the police?" "She won't," David said confidently. "They never do. Women like Sarah are too embarrassed, too broken by the betrayal to fight back. She'll blame herself, just like the others did. By the time she realizes what happened, we'll be long gone." Emma backed away slowly, her heart pounding so loud she was sure they would hear it. Her hands were shaking as she tried to process what she had just heard. David wasn't just planning to leave them. He was planning to destroy them completely. And apparently, he had done this before to other women, other families. She managed to slip out of the house unnoticed. But the conversation replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. That night, as David sat at their dinner table making jokes and asking about her day at school, Emma could barely look at him. Every smile felt like a lie. Every kind gesture felt like manipulation. For 3 weeks, Emma wrestled with what to do. She was only 8 years old, in 3rd grade, still struggling with multiplication tables. How could she possibly take on an adult criminal? Who would believe her? And how could she break her mother's heart when Sarah had been so happy lately, humming while she cooked dinner, smiling more than Emma had seen since the divorce? The weight of the secret was crushing her. Emma started having nightmares, waking up screaming about David taking her mom away. She lost her appetite, pushing food around her plate while David and her mom discussed wedding plans. Her grades began to slip as she found it impossible to concentrate in class, constantly thinking about what she had overheard. Emma tried dropping hints, each attempt more desperate than the last. She asked her mom questions about David's past, about where he went on his business trips, even suggested maybe they should wait longer before getting married. "Maybe we should get to know David better first," she had suggested one evening while helping her mom address wedding invitations. Sarah had laughed, thinking it was sweet. "Sweetheart, I've known David for 18 months. That's plenty of time. Besides, he loves us both so much. Did you see how excited he was when you called him Dad last week?" Emma had felt sick remembering that moment. She had called him Dad because she thought he truly cared about her, not knowing it was all part of his elaborate performance. She tried asking about his family. Where are David's parents? Why aren't they coming to the wedding? "Oh, honey, you know David's parents passed away when he was young. He doesn't have any family, which is why ours means so much to him. But Emma had seen the photos at Jennifer's house in the background when she peeked through the door. There were older people who looked like David in those pictures. Everything he had told them was a lie. The most heartbreaking attempt came when Emma found her mom crying happy tears while looking at her wedding dress 3 days before the ceremony. "Mommy, are you sure David really loves us?" Emma had asked quietly. Sarah had pulled her close, stroking her hair. "Oh, sweetheart, of course he does. Look how he takes care of us. He fixed your bike. He comes to all your school events. He even learned to make your favorite pancakes. That's what love looks like, Emma, when someone shows up for you every day." But Sarah was too caught up in wedding preparations and dismissed Emma's concerns as normal anxiety about change. Each failed attempt to warn her mother made Emma feel more isolated and desperate. The night before the wedding, Emma made a decision that would require more courage than any 8-year-old should ever need. She had spent hours lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow would be her last chance to save her family. The rehearsal dinner had been torture, watching David charm everyone while knowing the truth about who he really was. Around midnight, when she was sure her mom and David were asleep, Emma crept downstairs. David's jacket was hanging on the chair where he always left it, and she knew his phone would be in the pocket. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely operate the device, but she managed to unlock it using the passcode she had watched him enter dozens of times. Thinking it was sweet that he used her mom's birthday, what she found was worse than she had imagined. The phone contained not just conversations with Jennifer, but with multiple women. Linda in Chicago, as she had heard them mention, Maria in Phoenix, Susan in Denver. Each conversation followed the same pattern: promises of love and marriage while discussing their assets and the best ways to access their money. Screenshot after screenshot revealed David's true nature. Messages about how he had researched each woman's financial situation before approaching them. Photos of other children he had pretended to care about. And most damning of all, a group chat with other men who were apparently part of the same criminal network, sharing tips about which cities had the most vulnerable single mothers and how to avoid getting caught. Emma's small fingers worked frantically, screenshotting everything she could find. The messages with Jennifer showed detailed plans for their escape to Costa Rica, including fake identity documents that were already being prepared. There were bank account numbers, property deeds, and even discussions about how long to wait after the wedding before cleaning out Sarah's accounts to avoid suspicion. But the most chilling discovery was a document titled Sarah Martinez, Asset Summary, that contained every detail of her mother's financial life: her salary, her savings account balance, the equity in their house, even her life insurance policy information that David had somehow obtained. It was clear this wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a carefully planned heist that had been in the works for months. Emma's phone, a simple device her mom had given her for emergencies, now held the evidence that could save her family. But as she uploaded the photos to her cloud storage, she realized the full magnitude of what she was up against. This wasn't just one bad man. This was an organized criminal operation that had destroyed countless families. The next morning, Emma could barely eat breakfast. She sat at the kitchen table, pushing her cereal around the bowl, while her mom and David discussed the final wedding details. David seemed particularly cheerful, making jokes and complimenting Sarah's appearance. Now Emma knew why he was so happy. In just a few hours, he would officially have access to everything her mom had worked so hard for. "You seem quiet this morning, princess," David said, using the nickname that now made Emma's skin crawl. "Are you excited about today?" Emma looked up at him. This man she had trusted, had called Dad, had allowed into their most intimate family moments. "I guess," she managed to say. David reached over and ruffled her hair, the same gesture that used to make her feel loved and protected. "Don't worry. After today, we'll officially be a family. I'll always be here to take care of you and your mom." The lie was so casual, so convincing, that for a moment Emma almost doubted what she had seen. But then she remembered Jennifer, Marcus, and all the other women whose lives David had destroyed. She knew that tomorrow, during the ceremony, would be her only chance to expose the truth when everyone was gathered together, when there would be witnesses to hear what she had discovered. As the wedding march began playing, Emma watched her mother walk down the aisle, radiant in her white dress, completely unaware that the man waiting for her at the altar was a predator who had already chosen his next victim. Sarah's smile was so pure, so full of hope and love, that Emma felt her heart breaking. Her mom had spent 3 years rebuilding her life after the divorce, working extra shifts to pay for this dress, this ceremony, this new beginning. The guests were all smiling too, aunts and uncles and family friends who had watched Sarah struggle as a single mother and were genuinely happy to see her find love again. Emma's grandmother, who had helped raise her while Sarah worked, was dabbing at her eyes with tissue, overcome with joy for her daughter's happiness. Emma's heart broke seeing her mom's joy, knowing she was about to destroy this moment, but also knowing it was the only way to save her. The internal battle was tearing her apart. Part of her wanted to run, to pretend she had never seen anything, to let this beautiful moment continue. But she kept thinking about the other women, the other families that David had destroyed, and she knew she couldn't let it happen again. The ceremony proceeded normally at first. The pastor, a kind elderly man who had known Sarah's family for years, spoke about love, commitment, and the blending of families. Marriage is about more than just two people, he said, looking directly at Emma. It's about creating a safe haven where love can flourish, where children can grow up feeling secure and protected. David smiled and played his part perfectly, even winking at Emma when the pastor mentioned how happy he was to gain a daughter. His performance was flawless. He held Sarah's hands tenderly, gazed into her eyes with what looked like genuine adoration, and even had tears in his eyes during the vows. If Emma hadn't known the truth, if she hadn't seen him with Jennifer and Marcus, if she hadn't read those horrible messages, she might have believed his performance too. Sarah's vows were heartbreaking in their sincerity. David, you came into our lives when we needed hope the most. You showed Emma what it means to have a father's love, and you showed me that it's possible to trust again. I promise to love you, to support your dreams, and to build a beautiful life together with our daughter. When it was David's turn, his vows were perfectly crafted to manipulate the audience. Sarah, you and Emma have given me the family I never thought I'd have. Emma, I promise to always protect you and be the father you deserve. Together, we'll face whatever challenges come our way. The crowd was moved to tears. Even Emma's tough Uncle Miguel, who had been skeptical of David from the beginning, was nodding approvingly, but Emma could see through performance now. Every word was calculated. Every gesture designed to maintain his cover until he could complete his mission. But when the pastor reached the part about speaking now, or forever holding your peace, Emma knew this was her moment. Her legs felt like jelly as she stood up on the front pew where she had been sitting with her grandmother. The entire church was silent, waiting for the pastor to continue, when Emma's small voice cut through the silence like a knife. Stop. You can't marry him. The words came out louder than she had intended, echoing off the church walls. Gasps echoed to the church as Emma ran down the aisle, her flower basket forgotten, rose petals scattered in her wake. The guests turned in their seats, confusion and shock written on their faces. Some thought it was a child's tantrum. Others wondered if this was some kind of wedding tradition they weren't familiar with. Sarah's face went white with shock and embarrassment. This was her worst nightmare. Her daughter disrupting the most important day of her life in front of everyone they knew. Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing? She whispered urgently, trying to maintain her composure while her mind raced with confusion and growing panic. David knelt down, his face a carefully crafted mask of concern. But Emma could see the anger flashing in his eyes, the same cold calculation she had heard in his voice when he was talking to Jennifer. Hey there, princess. Are you just nervous? It's okay. Change can be scary. Why don't we talk about this after the ceremony? His voice was gentle, patient, the voice of a caring stepfather dealing with a frightened child. But Emma could hear the underlying threat, the desperation of a man whose carefully laid plans were about to be exposed. She noticed how his hand moved slightly toward her arm, as if he was preparing to physically remove her from the situation. But Emma backed away from him, her small hand shaking as she pulled out her phone. The weight of every adult's eyes on her was overwhelming. But she thought about her mom, about the other women David had hurt, about Jennifer's little boy Marcus, who was growing up without his father because David was too busy destroying other families. I know about Jennifer. Emma's voice cracked with emotion, but she forced herself to continue. I know about your son Marcus. I know about Linda in Chicago and Maria in Phoenix. I know you're only marrying Mommy to steal her money, and then you're going to leave us just like you left all the others. What is she talking about, David? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but in the stunned silence of the church, everyone heard it. Who is Jennifer? Who is Marcus? David's mask began to slip, his perfect composure cracking under the pressure. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool church air, and his voice took on a slightly desperate edge. Sarah, she's just a confused child. You know how kids can be when they feel threatened by change. She's been acting out for weeks, making up stories to get attention. But Emma held up her phone, her small fingers navigating to the screenshots she had saved. The evidence was right there, undeniable and damning. I have proof. I have pictures of your messages. You said Mommy was just like the others, that once you got her money and sold our house, you'd leave with Jennifer and Marcus to Costa Rica. You said she'd be too embarrassed to report it to the police, just like all the other women you stole from. The specificity of Emma's accusations sent a chill through the church. This wasn't the rambling of a confused child. This was detailed information that could only have come from somewhere real. The guests began looking at each other with growing alarm, the festive atmosphere completely shattered. Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her. The mention of Costa Rica hit her like a physical blow, because just 2 weeks ago, David had casually mentioned how beautiful Costa Rica was and how it would be a perfect place to retire someday. At the time, she had thought it was romantic pillow talk. Now it felt like he had been taunting her with his escape plan. "Let me see that phone," Sarah demanded, her voice stronger now despite the tremor in her hands. Sarah snatched the phone from Emma's hands, her wedding bouquet falling to the floor as she began scrolling through the evidence. Her face grew paler with each message she read. Each photo she saw, each detail of the elaborate con that had been orchestrated against her family. The church fell completely silent, except for the sound of Sarah's sharp intake of breath, as she read David's plans laid out in black and white. "You have another family?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence of the church, everyone heard it. The message thread with Jennifer was open on the screen, showing photos of David with the blonde woman and their toddler son. The resemblance between Marcus and David was unmistakable, but it was the financial documents that made Sarah's blood run cold. Her bank account numbers, her social security number, the details of her life insurance policy, even the estimated value of their house, all compiled in what looked like a criminal dossier. She realized that David had been gathering this information systematically, probably from the very beginning of their relationship. The pastor, who had never encountered anything like this in 40 years of performing weddings, stood frozen at the altar, unsure whether to continue the ceremony, stop it, or call for help. The organist had stopped playing entirely, and the church was filled with nothing but the sound of shocked breathing and whispered prayers. David's charming facade finally cracked completely. "Sarah, I can explain. It's not what it looks like." But the evidence was overwhelming. The photos of David with Jennifer and Marcus, messages about previous wives he had conned, detailed plans about accessing Sarah's bank accounts and selling her house. Emma had gathered enough proof to expose David as a serial marriage fraudster who had been targeting single mothers for years. Sarah looked at her 8-year-old daughter, this brave little girl who had risked everything to protect their family, and then back at the man she had almost married. "Get out," she said quietly. Then louder, "Get out." David tried one last manipulation. "Sarah, think about what you're doing. Think about Emma's future. She needs a father figure." But Sarah wrapped her arms around Emma, pulling her close. "She needs protection from people like you. She needs someone who will put her first. Always. And clearly, she's braver and smarter than any of us." As David stormed out of church, his true nature finally exposed, the guests sat in stunned silence. But Emma's grandmother was the first to stand and start clapping. "That little girl just saved this family," she announced loudly. Soon, the entire church was applauding Emma's courage. Later, as they sat in Sarah's childhood bedroom, still in their wedding clothes, Sarah held Emma close. "I'm so sorry you had to carry this secret alone. I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to tell me." Emma looked up at her mom with wise eyes that had seen too much for her age. I was scared you wouldn't believe me, and I was scared of making you sad. Sarah's tears fell freely now. Baby, you saved us. You were braver than I've ever been. I should have trusted your instincts. The aftermath revealed the full extent of David's deception. Police investigation uncovered that he had defrauded at least 6 other women over the past decade, always following the same pattern. He would target single mothers, gain their trust, convince them to give him access to their finances, and then disappear. Emma's courage had not only saved her own family, but had provided the evidence needed to bring David to justice. 6 months later, Sarah and Emma had rebuilt their lives, stronger than ever. They attended therapy together to process the trauma, and Sarah made a promise that she would never again ignore Emma's concerns about the people in their lives. Emma, meanwhile, had become something of a local hero, with the police department even giving her a special recognition for her bravery. The little girl who crashed her mom's wedding to reveal a terrible secret had become the hero of her own story, proving that sometimes the most important thing you can do is speak your truth, no matter how young you are or how scary it might be. And that truth, it really can set you free. I hope this story reminds you of the power we all have to protect the people we love, no matter our age or size. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from, and if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in the power of courage and love. Thanks for watching, and remember, your voice matters more than you know.